What's up?
Hello, Trojan fans. Welcome to another edition of the Peristyle Podcast.
Whoa, that was British.
Podcast. I was watching Wimbledon this morning, so maybe that's why I got a little Brit.
There you go.
Get some strawberries and cream for breakfast. That would have been nice. But yes, I'm your host, Ryan Abraham, joined alongside Mr. Triple Double himself, Connor Morrissette, and in studio again, we have India Otto. You might remember her from the USC women's basketball team. She's producing and hosting the show today. Welcome in, India. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you? Excited to be back yet again.
I'm excited as well, and hopefully everything works okay. We did the show last week. A little audio issues on the YouTube side, so let us know if you're watching live on YouTube or on Facebook if you're having any problems. And but I fixed the audio on YouTube later, so it should work okay. And of course, the podcast went out with good audio and stuff. But we're glad to be back. We're continuing our way too early game previews for USC. We got a couple big ones this week, Oregon and UCLA. But, I'm going to let India introduce this because this is like her job. This is where we're figuring out the dynamics of all this.
Well, as he said, we've got another exciting show for you guys today. We'll be previewing two more early opponents, talk Big Ten Media Day, and the new transfer portal window. But first, Trader Joe's.
Yeah, we got to talk about our sponsor, Trader Joe's. I'm all excited. I literally just finished my workout about an hour ago, so I'm pumped up a little bit. And it's 4th of July weekend, and I like to talk about Trader Joe's. I just went yesterday, did a lot of my shopping for 4th of July. I'm going to make some fish ceviche with some link cod that I caught up in Canada. But I'm going out to Temecula, so I had to pick up some of the veggies. It's a lot of good stuff over at Trader Joe's. But whatever you want to get for your barbecue, for your cookouts for 4th of July, I looked on TraderJoe's.com, and I'm seeing this something I need to make: caramelized onion double smashed burger. So there's a good. So if you ever make a smash burger, you smash them down,
hungry.
gets a little crispy. Yeah, Connor's always hungry, but yeah, looking at the Trader Joe's thing. But go check it out. But they've been a great partner with us for several years, and I go to the one here in Hermosa Beach every week and go pick up some stuff. But yeah, so make the ceviche. Should be fun. You guys have big 4th of July plans? What's going on?
Nothing too big. Usually I go back to New England, but this year going to go down to Orange County, going to spend it Newport Beach. So looking forward to that.
Nice.
Yeah, same. Just hang out with my family and, chill by the pool and things like that. And that's about it.
Your family local, India? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of local, yeah.
Nice, yeah. Well, that's great. Well, hopefully everyone has a good time. Yeah, my cousins live out in Temecula. They got a pool and stuff, so I go out there every once in a while. But try to bring some of the fish I caught and, make something cool. But get a lot of the fresh ingredients from Trader Joe's. Like you got to cut up jalapenos, red onions. I bought one of the long cucumbers that they have at Trader Joe's. Of course, you need citrus, lemon, lime, and I bought some orange too because I make like a homemade margarita. It's very good. And I'm trying this for the first time. Like if you like mimosas, I'm a big mimosa person. They have a good little a 4-pack of pineapple juice. I like making them with pineapple. But they also have their own Prosecco. So I haven't tried it yet, but it's only like $9 or something. So bottle of Prosecco for like $9, Trader Joe's label. So I'm going to try that one out. So haven't done that one yet. Got a mimosas. Are you a mimosa person, India?
I'm not like I'll have some wine like here or there to kind of decompress at night and watch a show or something. But that's about it for me.
Do you like mimosas or not really? No, you're a New England guy, probably not.
I mean, I'll take anything. So yeah, that works.
Nice. Well, yeah, thanks again to Trader Joe's. And I'm getting in the comments, if you're watching us live on YouTube or Facebook, put your questions, concerns in the comment section, and India can pull them up and put them on the screen. Any questions she'll star for later. We do have a voicemail to play. We have a couple emails before we get into everything. But they're saying the audio is great, which is good. And, it wasn't India's fault last week. But I did go and fix it. Just took a little while. But you can watch the YouTube video, and it should be fine. Her mother approved. She liked it. So if you're watching now,
she was a big fan.
Mrs. Otto, yeah, you say hi. India's doing a great job.
Somebody asked, what was today's workout, Ryan?
So it was a cardio one. I do F45, which are like 45-minute functional workouts. But this was a pain in the butt. It was like 18 stations, and you did like 35 seconds off, on, 10 seconds off, then 55 seconds on, and then 20 seconds off, go to the next station. There was like 18 stations. So it was just kind of like nonstop, just doing stuff, ski ergs or whatever, like all kinds of crap. But it was hard. Yeah, for an old guy like getting around. I do all right though.
Yeah, you seem hyped up. Seems like it was a good one.
I'm excited. I'm ready to talk like football. The media days are coming up. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But that means college football season is almost here. And when media day starts happening and you hear from stuff, then it's like, wow, now we actually have some college football, which I'm excited for.
Oh yeah, me too. What a really fun opportunity for USC. I think they did about as well as you could in the offseason for the most part. Nothing really stands out to me, and it was like, oh, this was a massive, massive issue. You would have liked to have kept Emmanuel Pregnon, but what have I said on the show repeatedly? If your worst loss of the offseason was losing a guard, I think you can overcome that. So added the general manager, new strength coach, some nice additions from the portal. There's a reason fans are excited about the team, and I co-sign on a lot of it. So let's, we can get into some of these previews here.
Yeah, and I know a lot of the momentum is on the recruiting side, which is not going to be around until 2026. But I think it's a general sense of better decision-making throughout the organization, through the football team and the athletic department. This new era that just started yesterday where revenue sharing is going to be a big part of college athletics going forwards. There's so many changes, but I think there's a lot of just positive things have been done to try to fix the issues that you had with USC. But it's like one of those things that's great. You can have a great offseason and do all the things right, but you got to win on Saturdays. Like, it's awesome when you have an 11 and the dealer has a 6 and your big bets out there. But then sometimes it doesn't go your way, but it's all set up to look like, hey, the schedule's not that hard. You fixed a lot of things. The defensive line looks better. Year 2 with Danton Lynn. You have the whole offseason with Jade Mayava, who finished the season 3-1. You got 2 of the best receivers in the country and a star in the making transferring in from the JC ranks at running back. A lot of things are set up like, yeah. But then if you go out and have a couple of clunkers, that's not what you want. So you're right. It's set up well. So I think people should be excited.
Yeah, I co-sign on that, and I know we'll get into some of these team previews in a second. I've, the last couple of weeks, had a chance to really dive into some of the USC opponents as much as you can in July. A lot changes when these teams get on the field, but when you compare USC's roster to a lot of these other rosters, every team has some question marks, but by and large, outside of Notre Dame, who has a question mark quarterback, but that's really it for them. Every other team on the schedule has some serious question marks, and I think USC can compete in a lot of these games. We're going to talk about Oregon here in a second. We're going to talk about UCLA, 2 teams who UCLA is certainly a rivalry, and I don't know, do you consider Oregon a rival? I kind of do, but that might be controversial. So 2 teams that USC, if they really want to show that they've taken a leap, has to beat this year, and I think they'll have a chance in both those games. Oregon will be tougher on the road, but they have a lot of turnover from last year's team, that's for sure.
Yeah. India, where are we starting? What do you want to start with?
Well, let's jump right into our 2 early opponent previews today. So as they mentioned, we've got the Oregon Ducks and the UCLA Bruins. So let's get started.
All right. Thank you, India. So the reason we're going a little bit out of order is because we're basing these off of Bud Elliott's summer school shows where he previews the teams with the writer from those sites. So we've done a good amount so far, but now we're going to go to the last 2 games of the season, skipping around a little bit. So it's at Oregon. USC hasn't beaten Oregon since 2016, but this year it looks like they'll have a chance to do that. Oregon has a new quarterback in Dante Moore. They have 4 new offensive linemen. Their defensive line is totally new, and I'll dive into the nitty-gritty with them in a little bit. But what will really be interesting in this game, Ryan, is Oregon. They've done really well in the transfer portal lately. We all saw what happened to quarterback and with some of their other impact players in years past. And their biggest portal addition this year was a running back from Tulane.
TCU? Oh, Tulane or TCU?
Tulane, Mekhi Hughes. And they're banking on their offensive line getting stuff figured out, and they think Hughes has the chance to be a Heisman candidate. So we can start there. USC, when they go to Autzen Stadium Saturday, November 22nd, they're going to have to slow down the run, assuming Hughes is healthy. And Danton Lynn this offseason, he's preached we wanted to get bigger. That's why Tremaine Carroll was brought in, the discipline. USC, I think for the first time in a couple years, or maybe the first time ever under Lincoln Riley, is equipped to handle a really good running game potentially in Oregon, and we can start there.
Yeah, for sure. I think, some of the things Oregon's done, now they've recruited at a high level, I think top 5 classes the last couple years, top 10 the last 3. So Dan Lanning's definitely doing that. They were portal kind of heavy early on, splashing money around a little bit. And I think they've backed off that some. Now they had to go to the portal a bunch this offseason because of, they're making that run to the playoff, winning the Big Ten championship, but then, losing a lot of bodies. And there's some similar things that Oregon's done that sort of USC has done. I think on the offensive line, we've seen USC bring in some transfers that sometimes works pretty well and sometimes doesn't. Now, one of those transfers is from USC. So Emmanuel Pregnon, you know how good he can be. But and I think Lincoln Riley, one consistent thing he's done every year is bring in an impact running back, number 1 guy. And it looks like from what, on the Oregon side, you got the same thing going. I think I've read about him and seen, just big dude, like just a massive human being. So there's kind of some similar things there. I think the secondary probably is where they need the most help, but they did some work on the defensive line, getting Bear Alexander coming in there. Wasn't the hardest worker maybe when he was at USC, but we'll see if that, that from what we've read, he's bought in up in Eugene, so we'll kind of see what happens there. But this is obviously a team that was really good, that beat the national champions. It was crazy by a point, but they beat them in Austin. It's a tough place to play. It wasn't that close when they played in the Rose Bowl, but this team can get up for big games. And I think Blackie Chant said in the chat that Oregon's not a rival, but they're a recruiting rival. And I think it's a big deal to be able to try to get wins against a team that you're recruiting against. Oregon, it wasn't really much of a rivalry as far as recruiting goes in the early days of NIL, but now USC's kind of got their act together, and you can go toe-to-toe with an Oregon that does have deep pockets, and USC now does as well, and they've gone head-to-head and beat the Ducks for some of these guys. But if you even go back to like the COVID year, who's the coach at Miami now? Cristobal. USC was like 5-1 or whatever, and then they play Oregon in the Coliseum and lose, and Cristobal was just eating it up, using it for recruiting purposes and all that. So I think the rivalry there's more on the recruiting side, but it wasn't much of a rivalry the last few years. Now USC has its act together. They're recruiting at a higher level and can compete with Oregon, but not, you could argue this is the toughest game of the season, or maybe the one we talked about last week at Notre Dame. But there's not a guarantee. The 13-1 last year was massive. Can they do that? But there's a lot of guys being replaced through the portal, and sometimes that works out well, and sometimes it's there's some questions there.
I can get into more of Oregon's roster here, but just to set the scene a little bit more, so they might not be that rivalry that rival in the sense of like a UCLA or a Notre Dame, but since 2007, USC's 3-8 against Oregon, so they just haven't done a good enough job against the Ducks, and this is why this season is such a big opportunity. So yeah, the new quarterback in Dante Moore. Oregon, it was rumored, was looking around for a quarterback in that first portal window because they were a little unsure on Moore, so they didn't get that. The big rumor was Quinn Ewers was someone who they were looking at, the Texas quarterback who probably should have gone to Oregon, would have gotten paid a lot more, and would have been a starter, whereas he goes to the NFL and was a 7th-round pick, I think. So that's something that is certainly going to be looked at here if Dante Moore struggles. We talked about the running back, the new look offensive line. Defensively, they lose a ton of guys in the defensive line, but they bring back a couple of good edge rushers, Mateo Uiagalelei, first and foremost. In the middle of the defensive line, they're relying on Amari Washington to come in, who the coaching staff's high on up there, but he is a little bit unproven, and we'll see if he can take that leap. And then it's a totally new secondary, as you mentioned, Ryan. So there's some transfers, some young players, and there's some talented guys. The ceiling is pretty high, but it needs to come together. So when you compare their roster to a USC, I think the USC offensive line is unproven, and the defensive line, while the stats might not be there, I feel pretty good about the USC defensive line just based on the coaching that they've got and the bodies that they have in that room. I think we will see some development this year, and for the first time probably under Lincoln Riley, I think USC has a defensive line that has the potential to rival Oregon, and that was something that's been missing. So that's really significant. And as we talked about off the top with Oregon, you got to stop the run in that game. USC probably has the defensive line on paper to do that. So that's going to be a fascinating part of that matchup. It's a long way away, but that's the matchup I'll be circling.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And I think both sides, with USC, their defensive line looks completely different. If you just look, when you watched what the parts of practice we got to watch, it looked like it was it just was another universe as far as what these guys look like. But guys like Keyshawn Silver, did they have like 50 sacks coming? No, they don't have the stats kind of going with it, but you just feel like, okay, these are guys that can come into this system and actually perform. It was a really sound defense last year that lacked the big playability, lacked to be able to sack the quarterback and force negative plays. And I feel like, you've added bodies to do that. On the Oregon side, if you looked at what they added last year, there were like proven production guys. And I think there's some similarities this year where you're like projecting that these guys can do well. So I think that there's a lot of actually similarities between USC and Oregon, besides Oregon's won the Big Ten and USC had a losing record in the Big Ten. But it's a road game, familiar road game, but USC lost at Washington last year. The only road win USC had was at the Rose Bowl, which, you take a bus. We're not going to really call it a road game. But this would be, I think this is one of those seasons we're talking about 8-4, 9-3. People are penciling in, lost to Notre Dame, lost to Oregon. But you remember back like the Lane Kiffin days, was it 2012, I think, when USC was like 10-2, went up there. It was super cold. Kiffin put on his like ski, beanie to like make it look like, man, why would you want to play here? This place is so cold. And they get the win, even though I think they had a big lead and then they kind of blew it or whatever. But they ended up getting the win. It was a huge deal that season that, USC couldn't go to the bowl game. And I think you could potentially do something like that where no one's expecting you to go in there and get a win. But if you get your act together, this is the end of the season. You've had a lot of time to kind of get things right. There'll be some tough road tests along the way. This would be massive. It would be a massive win, not just because, it potentially get, wherever USC's record at the time, maybe that was the game you needed to get into the playoff if you can beat UCLA the next week, but on the recruiting side too, where it's great that you can sell the story about being in the big media market and having the resources to compete with Oregon, but then beating the Ducks head to head, I think would matter a lot. So this is one of those ones that like you might be penciling, like your USC's not going to be favored preseason. We'll see what happens during the season if they would. But man, it would be a huge win. Like as far as games on the schedule, like massive wins, if you're able to kind of take care of business otherwise, like I think this would be the biggest win that USC could probably have all season.
Oregon will bounce back with their recruiting, but right now USC is undoubtedly doing a better job in 2026. And a couple signing days ago, I wrote about how when USC and Oregon went head-to-head for a recruit, Oregon won pretty much every single time. And USC's been able to turn the tide with the 2026 class, getting guys like Tom from Mater Dei, who was committed to Oregon before that. Oregon has been interested in some USC commits, and USC's been able to land them, which was not the case recently. So USC's made great strides in the recruiting trail. We think they've made great strides on the field, but this is the game where you got to show that. And it's great to catch up in recruiting. That's what we were all talking about. But the most important thing is catching up with them on the field, and USC is going to have that opportunity here. So I agree. From a West Coast power perspective, people just like to laugh at Oregon because they got blown out in the Rose Bowl. So I understand that, but like they did have an undefeated league championship season, and one big loss doesn't totally negate all of that. I know some people will say, oh, well, they weren't competitive in that game. It all goes away. Like they still have some real reasons to be happy after that season. And USC now looks to be on the upswing. Oregon will, of course, be taking a step back with all the guys they've lost. I think they had the most players drafted in their program's history last season. So you've made the leap on the recruiting trail. You had the chance to make the leap on the field, and I agree with you. I think the only game on their schedule for USC that I look at and have a real hard time picturing them winning is Notre Dame. This Oregon game, USC was bad on the road last year. I understand that, but that's a game that I think they have a chance just because there are so many new pieces, and I think USC is the better quarterback. So, of course, you got to put your money where your mouth is, but they have a chance, which in years past I don't think we'd be saying, oh, they have a great chance. It would be a big shock if they had won up at Autzen Stadium. That's not going to be the case this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you look at the last game, and yes, like was not competitive against Ohio State after beating the Buckeyes in Eugene. So it's a little bit different feel, but the Big Ten won the last 2 national championships. Oregon's first year in the league, won the damn league. So, like, it was a big accomplishment. There's a lot to replace on the roster. Like you mentioned, all the guys that were getting drafted and stuff. And, we'll see what, USC, I think USC played against Dante Moore when he was at UCLA, right? I think did he start? I don't remember if he started that game or not, but maybe not. Maybe he didn't. I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
We can figure it out. But, unproven quarterback. You mentioned Dan Lanning was potentially going to go into the portal and find somebody. Put in the chat if you guys are watching the chat. Did
I think it was Garbers, right? It had to have been, right?
Yeah, 2 years. Was it 2 years ago? Yeah. So I don't remember, but
and they won. They beat USC.
They did beat USC.
Yeah,
I think
it was Garbers. Dante Moore didn't play that game.
He didn't play. Okay, he played during the season though a little bit, right? He started early and then they got replaced by Garbers, got hurt, or I can't remember whatever happened there, but I think it would be a big deal. But Oregon came in and wanted to make a splash. When the Ducks and the Huskies came into the league, they were secondary ads. They were half share people, so they weren't like they were full citizens. Well, how do you change that? By winning the damn league, and Oregon did that. If you're adding 4 teams from the Pac-12, and one of them's USC, and you're USC, you want to be able to make the biggest splash, and you weren't able to do that. You're making a bigger splash now in this offseason, and I think going forward, you want to really be taken seriously. This is one of those games that, yeah, you might not be favored, but play out of your mind. Like, I was talking about watching like Wimbledon. You see, Coco Gauff got beat by someone that was just like, she played out of her mind, and like, can you go up there and play well? And even if Oregon's a better team, top to bottom, you can take a team like that out and just get your ducks in a row, get everything together, and play a great game. So I think it would be a big one if USC can do that.
No pun intended.
Yes,
ducks in a row.
Yeah,
But
we have Jimmy in the chat here saying Oregon is not taking a step back. USC does not have the better quarterback. This shit is hilarious. Oregon has to take some kind of a step back, at least early in the season with all the guys they've lost. I don't want to be the USC honk, though, on the USC football podcast and say they're going to go in and win for sure. The whole point of this conversation is that USC has a chance in this game, whereas when Caleb Williams was the quarterback and they went up to Autzen Stadium last time, that defense was so bad that I don't think anyone believed that they had a chance. So I don't know where Jimmy's allegiance lies. It probably looks like Oregon. I don't know how you can say with a straight face that they won't take a step back. They're not going to be undefeated next season. That would be a shock. But they could still make the college football playoff. They could still compete for the Big Ten championship. It's not like they're going to be bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. But just for the first time in a few years here, USC is going to have a chance to win that game because of the strides that they've taken in the offseason, where last season I wasn't saying that. A couple of years ago, that defense with Alex Grinch, before the season, we thought, maybe they brought in some good transfer guys and that would make a difference, but Grinch was so bad that it didn't end up mattering. You don't have an Alex Grinch anymore. You've made some good strides in the offseason that you didn't make the year before. There's a reason that the gap is closer, and I think even the biggest Oregon fan would admit that the gap between USC and Oregon is closer than it's been the last couple of years. That's good for USC, but again, I don't think they're going to automatically go into Autzen Stadium and win that game. The point of this conversation is they finally have a chance to do so, which that's all you can ask for, having a chance.
And I think if you're a Ducks fan, like, you probably will have you can't have a better regular season than you did because you were undefeated and you won the Big Ten. Most likely you're going to have a worse regular season, but you could have a better postseason, where you don't have the terrible draw that the Ducks had with the bye and then having to play red hot Ohio State. So it's one of those things where maybe Oregon goes 10-2, but still gets in the playoff and has more of a Penn State kind of run where you make the semifinal. You're like, would you rather have that or the undefeated season? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Now it's straight seeding this year, but yeah, if you're a Ducks fan, you're probably gonna have a worse regular season. That's just, there's no place you can't get better than what you did, but you could certainly have a better postseason. And we've seen some teams have the ability to do that. And I think Oregon's one of them. We'll see.
They go to Penn State and play at night. Isn't that an automatic loss pretty much?
It's not great. Penn State brings a lot of dudes back, and you'll see. And I think what's really hard about, the offseason stuff, before you would look at returning production and all that. And sometimes that's just, you lose a lot of guys. how do you replace them? Now, Oregon's recruited well, so there's young players that can step up that, weren't starters that can play and also hit the portal hard. But we've seen that works sometimes, and we've seen it not work. It's really hard to tell. But just to assume that, okay, Oregon's just going to keep it rolling exactly the way we were before, I think, it's possible for sure, but I wouldn't say probable.
We've probably spent more time talking about the team USC fans hate the most. Let's go to another team that they hate the most in UCLA. Does that work?
Yeah, India. As a former USC athlete, what the UCLA game mean to you?
Everything. I mean, obviously each practice and the whole season is competitive, and like you play more, you practice more than you play games. So we went into every practice, wanting to get better and 1% better. But man, there's something different about that UCLA week. Like practices are just 10 times more intense. Like our blood is boiling through the whole week. Like we're so excited. And then when you run out of that tunnel, and you see that blue and yellow, it's something different. So the UCLA rivalry is real, and to this day, like I cannot stand UCLA.
Yeah, nice. I think on the football side, because of the Notre Dame game, it's a huge national rivalry we talked about last week. But when pretty much every other sport, I mean, Notre Dame doesn't really mean much because it's not like this football, centric thing. So UCLA is like the rivalry, the game. And USC got the win last year, the only road win in the Big Ten, which we say doesn't necessarily count, but whatever. It was a road win in the Big Ten in some aspects. 5-7, but finished the season 4-2, I believe. UCLA did get some big win. Like they played
beat Iowa at home.
Beat Nebraska on the road. Like, oh man, Nebraska fans did not like that. And then they won the Nico sweepstakes in the offseason. So there's some. I think UCLA is a team that's looking for bowl eligibility this year, right? That's like kind of the goal.
Yes, they are. USC plays them last game of the season at the Coliseum this year. That's Saturday, November 29th. And I'd have to look, but the last few years, it's weird. The away team has won more often than the home team in recent years. So USC will be looking to buck that trend. But yeah, breaking down UCLA quickly, the biggest story of the offseason for them was getting Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee. They have a new offensive coordinator who's replacing what's the guy's name who was with the Chiefs for that long time? The bald guy. Why am I blanking?
Oh my gosh,
he's gone.
He was
terrible.
Yeah.
Chat, please help us. Eric something, right?
Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, Eric Bieniemy.
Sorry,
he's gone, and we've already forgotten his name. That's how bad he was. Tino Sinceri comes in, the Indiana quarterbacks coach and co-offensive coordinator, to be UCLA's OC. He's never called plays before, or at least he didn't last year at Indiana. Yeah. So it's a big swing they're taking with him to try to match Nico with a new offensive coordinator, but he's that young, tight pants offensive coordinator, the guys that when I'm listening to Boston sports radio, that's who everyone wants the Patriots to get as their offensive coordinator. They're young and they got tight pants. That's who we're looking for. So Tino Sinceri.
That's what the WEEI people want?
Yep.
Okay.
Tino Sinceri fits that mold. But let's start with Nico, Ryan. How much do you think he can change their fortune, where he was good at Tennessee last season, not great, but he's undoubtedly a way bigger quarterback than anyone UCLA fans could have possibly dreamed of. I think maybe 6 months before they signed him. They were looking at an Appalachian State transfer, Joey Aguilar, to be their starter. Ethan Garbers was serviceable, but not great. Like this for UCLA is a huge deal.
It is a big deal. And I guess, I know David Woods did the interview with Bud Elliott, and for Aguilar, I guess they weren't all that impressed with him in the spring. I think so. He's at Tennessee now, so there was this quarterback swap with picks to be named later, or whatever. Yeah, players to be named later. To get a high level recruit like that, now it's certainly a weird situation where this is a player coming out of high school that wasn't that far away from UCLA, but the Bruins weren't going to pay him $8 million over 4 years like Tennessee pledged. He was going to make $2.5 million in 2025, and his family, agents, whatever, were like, hey, Carson Beck's getting like $4 million at Miami. Let's get more. And Tennessee's like, you've been with us for a couple of years, and you're okay, but it's probably not. I think Tennessee wanted to make a splash. They had money to spend, and there was a lot of upside with Nico that he was fine, but he wasn't like killing it. So they're like, you're not worth more than what we're paying you like enough already. Which I think Tennessee had the right attitude. Like, hey, we signed you this deal. We'll keep going with it, but you're not worth more. We're not paying more. And he tries the open market. It doesn't work. UCLA gets him for a discount, which I think it's in the 1.5 million range. So I think there's probably motivation on Nico's side, knowing that this was this huge, I mean, we talked about this for weeks in the offseason, right? Like what's going to happen. Tennessee's losing, this is a potential playoff team, and they were a playoff team last year. He took the team to the playoffs, and they're not keeping their quarterback. So I think he's got some motivation too, because there was all this negative talk. He's playing closer to home. For UCLA, however you got it, you got a big time recruit that a lot of people wanted, and took his team to the playoff last year. So hey, why can't this guy lead us to bowl eligibility? Ethan Garber's played well at times, got some big wins for the Bruins. Everyone was sort of bagging on Deshaun Foster, who came in a really tough situation late in the game after Chip Kelly leaves, and did a pretty nice job to end the season. So I think this is, as far as landing spots go, I mean, it could be pretty soft. We'll see how this all works together. Like you mentioned, having an offensive coordinator that doesn't have experience calling plays, but was around a really good offense with Kirk Cignetti at Indiana. So I don't know. This is one of those things where it could just be like, oh my God, this is a disaster, like DJU when he went to FSU, or it could be, wow, he looks really good. So, what a great move. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery, right? And maybe that's what you need for Nico. But for UCLA, I think you got to take this chance. And but we just don't know. It literally could be a DJU situation where you're like, oh my God, this is terrible, or wow, this is great. Like this worked out really well.
I describe Nico at Tennessee as solid but managed. You could tell like they really wanted to say, hey, on this play, make this throw. Like they managed him, and that's the reason he kept the interception numbers down. But when they went up against a good team, as we saw in the playoff, they just got totally manhandled in that. Was that Ohio State, right, that just beat them down?
Played. They ran into the Ohio State bandwagon.
Yeah.
The buzzsaw. Yeah.
And they were the best team in the country last year at the end of the day. So, just because he didn't look good against them doesn't mean it's the end of the world. I hope that UCLA lets him loose a little bit, and we can kind of see what he looks like, not totally managed. But anyway, we can quickly run through the rest of UCLA's team here. I think their skill guys are decent. I'd describe them as good, not great. I don't think there's anyone within their skill group that it's like, oh, man, you got a game plan for him. The offensive line's the big question mark. The offensive line last year, especially their left tackle, was god-awful, and they've added a bunch of guys. Cortland Ford is going to be their left tackle. Remember him, who was at USC.
Where was he? He went 2 years somewhere else. Kentucky, okay. And did he play?
Didn't really play much, but...
Yeah. People were excited about Cortland Ford at USC. Yeah.
I think he could be serviceable, so that's better than what they had last year. The question mark is, though, like, can it gel? Can it look good? It was just so bad last year. So our pal David Woods talked about how the offensive line will be better than last year, but if it's just a little bit better, that's not really saying much because they were so bad. So that's what they'll be looking at for that. And then defensively, Akaika Malloy has been a great coordinator for UCLA.
Was he the linebacker coach that got promoted, I think? Yeah, okay.
So he took over for Danton Lynn and did a nice job after Lynn went to USC. UCLA, though, they don't have any proven pass rushers, so he's going to have to manufacture some pass rush. They returned some linebackers. John Vons will be back, but they, of course, lost Schwessenzer, who I think was he the first pick of the second round with the Browns last year.
So, yeah.
He was a highly ranked guy, former walk-on, so they lose a valuable linebacker. And then in the secondary, it's all new faces, but they get Demetrius Martin from Michigan State, and I have confidence that he'll be able to put together a good secondary. They have all these transfers and a few returners. I think that secondary has the chance to be pretty good. But the overarching thing with UCLA is they got the quarterback who they're excited about, but a lot needs to go right because they have just so many new faces. It's almost as if they had a coaching change from Deshaun Foster. They have so many transfers, but he's back, and they ended the year strong last year, but I don't know how much momentum that can carry when the roster is totally different. So they're a fascinating team. I think their variance is pretty high. They could be potentially a team that wins 8 games. That is probably too high. They're probably just going to be fighting for bowl eligibility, but if everything that they've picked up this offseason works out, they could be pretty formidable, but it's a big test here for me on what day is it, July 2nd, to say, oh, they're going to be pretty good. They have a lot that needs to go right.
Yeah, I think on the defensive side, it might be similar to what we saw from USC last year when they took Danton Lynn, where are they going to sack the quarterback a lot, but they're going to be fundamentally sound. And then you bring in Demetrius Martin, and if you just know the name, like talent acquisition is not going to be a problem there. Like he'll get guys from the portal. He's recruiting well. So like USC kind of a deep secondary. You might see the same sort of thing with UCLA. And maybe they're not good at getting after the passer, but I think they're going to be more fundamentally sound. So this would be interesting. I think it was a big win USC got last year going into the Rose Bowl, but this is one where I think UCLA has to take strides year one in the Big Ten, and got to to beat Iowa, to beat Nebraska, like that's good. Like those are things like, okay, we can check that off. I think USC has higher aspirations than being bowl eligible, and so I think this is one of those games that you have to. It's at home. You have to be able to take care of business in this one, and it's going to be the last game of the season coming off the Oregon game. I'm curious to see though, like Cortland Ford. I guess the last two players to play on both sides of the rivalry, both last name Ford, right? Kyle Ford and now Cortland Ford. We'll see if Cortland Ford's in there. A little concerned. I mean, I think USC fans were excited about him, and then he goes to Kentucky, doesn't really do much. Maybe he's a rotational player at UCLA. I don't know. We'll have to see. But I think last year, such a whirlwind for Deshaun Foster to just even to get to 5-7, I think was pretty darn good to finish the season strong. You want to be annoying to some of the traditional Big Ten teams, and to go into Lincoln and get a win, man. That's something that I have friends that went to Nebraska, like that bothers them they don't like that at all. So yeah, I think it's a dangerous game, but I think this is one, if USC is anywhere near playing to their potential, they should be able to handle what the Bruins are doing.
Yeah, UCLA lost 5 games in a row last year, and they squeaked by Hawaii. We were watching that game in Las Vegas. Like, this was terrible. Rough. So after that game, I was ready to say, and then their 5-game losing streak, like, they're in trouble. But remember, they played Penn State pretty tight on the road, and then they ended up winning 4 of their last 6. So didn't quite get to bowl eligibility, but yeah, they certainly ended the year well, and they got
crushed by Indiana. Like, we didn't know that Indiana was like a death machine, and you're like, and UCLA just gets absolutely destroyed.
Then they played at LSU for some reason.
Yeah, they played at LSU, who had already lost to USC earlier. They're like, we're not letting another LA team beat us. They played Oregon. Was it at Oregon or was it?
No, home against Oregon. And that game was bad.
Yeah, that was a bad. I mean, but like, it's Oregon. Like they went undefeated and won the big. Like that 5-game losing streak. They're sort of just like, all right, this is not a great situation for Indiana. You didn't know was the Death Star for a while, and that's what they were. So, but a good bounce back, and some of those sort of more mortal, mediocre Big Ten teams, UCLA was able to play much tougher, and get some wins. So, but you can't let the Bruins. India said it. Like there's got to be hatred there. You just can't let Deshaun Foster get his signature win. It's happened a lot of times on rivalry where some bad UCLA coach gets some extra time because they beat USC. You can't let that happen. Especially if you're if this is you're 10 and whatever. No, 9
and 1
or 9-2. And potentially could go 10-2, go to the playoffs, and you lose to UCLA in the last. That would be bad.
That would not be good. We talked Oregon. We talked UCLA. Should we go around the panel here on July 2nd? What's USC's record in those games, Ryan?
I mean, I think it's 1-1 is going to be pretty easy. I think it's you'd have to, by the end of the season too, how well is USC playing? Are they playing near the potential? Then you give them a shot. Does Oregon look just like they did last year, just maybe a little worse? Are they significantly taking a step back? It's just hard to say, but I think the fair bet would be, go 1-1, but I see a chance that they could sweep it, but it would, tough one against Oregon on the road. I think just 1-1's the safer pick.
India, do you have a hot take here on July 2nd? Do you want to pick USC to go 0-2 and make everyone not like you?
I'm going 2-0. I'm going
there you go.
my
There you go.
Trojans.
Okay, so
2-0.
India.
They're going to get it done in Eugene.
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
I wonder if there's a world where they beat Oregon but lose to UCLA. Anything can happen. You know?
I think there's probably the most likely scenario of losing to UCLA is beating Oregon because then because then you're like
we're talking crazy on July 2nd.
but then you're like a big letdown.
Well, then you'd think that wouldn't they
I think
beat
there's more
UCLA
fun.
if they just beat Oregon? I know what you're saying, but
It's a huge letdown.
UCLA at home. Isn't the offseason fun? I guess I never made my prediction. I'll say 1-1. Sorry to,
That's okay.
not really take a stand, but I'm in no position to take a stand.
How
here in
funny
the
would
summer.
it be if it was like you beat Oregon and then lost to UCLA? Maybe UCLA's good.
Well,
Who knows?
what always happens every year is we talk and it's like, oh, this is what we think is going to happen doesn't happen. So I don't rule anything out.
When we were previewing games, and I remember doing this for the Big Ten, our Big Ten podcast, RIP. No, it's not dead, but we haven't done it for a while. But the podcast of champions, we were I think I had Indiana going like 9-3 or something. Just looking at, it was like after listening to Kirk Cignetti talk, I was like, oh my gosh, he's going to destroy this. Like he's going to come in, and their schedule was pretty easy. I'm like, they're going to do well. I didn't think 11-1 well or whatever it was, but I thought they would do, really well. But you just didn't know. And then by the end of the season, you're like, okay, well, you got to play. If it was like Purdue at Indiana, you might have been, oh, that's like a coin flip. And then by the end, you're like, no, that's the worst team in the Big Ten and one of the best. You just don't know. And maybe UCLA is like, wow, they're like really good. Nico's amazing. Or they're like, oh, they're bad. Or, Oregon's more of a mortal team and not just this undefeated juggernaut. You never know what's going to happen. USC, wide range. They could be like, oh my God, they finally figured it out. They're putting it together, putting all this talent to good use. Or they're like, they go on the road and look like crap in the fourth quarter again, just like they did last year. You just don't know.
USC better start 4-0. That's all I got to say, because that's the smooth landing to start the year, and then you take off, and you got to add Illinois, and it gets a lot harder outside of that Northwestern game after that. But the schedule sets up nicely for USC. I'll say that.
Yeah. We can talk about Media Day real quick.
Yeah, great stuff on the Oregon Ducks and UCLA Bruins. Let's move on to Big Ten Media Day, which will be held late July in Las Vegas again. And we've got 3 Trojans going to represent. So, guys, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I put this in here just to try to create some controversy, but I don't think there's any controversy. But this happens sometimes. But, yeah, Connor and I will both be there. Big Ten Media Days in Las Vegas. 3 Trojans will be there. Mekhi Lemon, the wide receiver. Kamari Ramsey, the safety, who was there. He was
there last year, yep.
And Elijah Page, USC's left tackle. Now, who isn't there? Returning starter quarterback Jade Mayava. Now, I looked this up. So the Big Ten doesn't have a lot of returning quarterbacks. But like Nico for UCLA, he's going to Media Days. There's 7 Big Ten teams that have their regular starter at the end of the season returning, and only 2 of them are not coming to Media Day. Aiden Childs at Michigan State, but for whatever reason, Jonathan Smith, who's a former quarterback, doesn't bring quarterbacks to Media Days. I don't know why, but he never did that at Oregon State, I guess. And then UCLA. Now, Lincoln Riley's brought a quarterback every year he's been at USC. But before that, USC had a couple of years where they didn't bring a quarterback. I think like Christian Rector and Michael Pittman came in like 2019. There was a couple of years where they didn't bring a quarterback. You had like JT Daniels coming in and starting as a young kid. And I think Keaton Slovis went 1 year, but then wasn't named a captain. There's some weird stuff going on there. But I was just, hey, we got to talk about something in the offseason. Is it a big deal that Jade Mayava's not going to Media Day, Connor?
No, not a big deal at all. I don't exactly know why he's not coming. I think as the established starter, it would make sense for him to show up. And when he's spoken to the media, no slight to Mekhi Lemon, he's a better talker than Mekhi Lemon, so I don't understand.
Yeah, Mekhi Lemon's not the most yeah.
Yeah, so maybe, Mekhi Lemon is a damn good player.
Yes.
And a leader on the team, and I don't know if USC cares about how well, if the guy speaks for short sentences or has long soliloquies, they probably don't care much about that. But it's interesting that he's not coming. But does that mean that he's not the starter or won't be the quarterback next season? I don't think so at all. Remember, if Hassan Longstreet beats him out, Gerard makes this point all the time. It's not good for Lincoln Riley. It's not good for USC. You don't want a true freshman to beat out a guy who started 4 games last year, has been in college for, I think, 4 years now, and has started 1.5 seasons with 2 years under Lincoln Riley. That would just not be a good look. So if it's Longstreet, I know that gets the fan base excited, and I understand that, but people should be rooting for Maeva, because if he's bad, that I don't think makes Lincoln Riley look good, where 2 years in a row, all of a sudden you got to bench your quarterback. That's not good.
Yeah. But I don't think it means much, but, we need something to talk about. So we can kind of
Do you? So you don't think it means anything? You're the one who's stirring up the drama.
Stir up some drama. No, I think ideally you'd like that. And, I like Makai Lemon a lot, but he's more of he has a harder time speaking with the media. He's just a little more reluctant. He's going to be shorter, and I don't know if you want to put him in that situation where you're going to be asked all these questions and stuff all the time. But he's one of the best players on the team, and I think it's great that he's going to represent in Vegas. And I think it's like any kind of, how do you get better at interviewing? Just do more interviews. Like if you're interviewing for a job or whatever, it's better to do that. How do you get better at doing media stuff? You do more of it. India's doing the hosting, and it's like, hey, how are you going to get better at this? Keep doing shows and keep, and I think the more experience you get, you do it. But just the feeling I got was Makai Lemon never felt all that comfortable. It didn't seem like something he would necessarily want to do. So in that situation, you're like, hey, why wouldn't you want Jane Maeva there? I'm sure they have their reasons. I don't think it's a huge deal either way. I think if he's not a captain, that would probably be more, and we're going to see what Lincoln Riley does, captains-wise and stuff. But
I hope they make 4 guys captains.
I think that's a better thing to do, yeah. Like the weekly stuff. But I forget what year it was 2019 or something, where Keaton Slovis wasn't he was a returning starter, but wasn't a team captain. And it's one of those things. I don't know if India has that happened on the basketball side too, where if it's picked by media day, is not picked by your peers. This is something that USC makes but captains wise, usually this is the players picking it. And if you're the quarterback of the team, you'd like the players to pick you as the captain, I would think.
Does that happen in basketball?
Yeah. The team usually does a team vote on who they think the captain should be, and then the coaches also have a say, ultimately have a say in it as well. But yeah, if you're a quarterback of a team, you obviously want to garner the respect of your entire locker room, and so not being a captain is probably not the best thing. But yeah, it's usually picked from your teammates and then the coaches as well.
Is this in any way a challenge to Maeva, Ryan? Don't get too comfortable.
Maybe
reading too much into it.
But you've mentioned before, this, even if he plays poorly, which he's won games where he's played poorly already, but USC should still be 4-0. I think it's just one of those situations where USC has a good record to start, and we've seen this a lot in USC teams in the past. They start off 5-1 or whatever a couple of years ago, but they didn't look that good, and the schedule gets harder, and then those didn't look good in a win turns into losses. So I think that's one of those things where, can you replace the quarterback if he's going 4-0? I don't think so, but if you're not looking very good and you know that the schedule is going to get tougher, you might have to do something about it.
Agreed.
But don't be comfortable, yeah.
The overarching point of this, though, no Jaden Maeva coming to Media Day. It'll be nice to chat with 3 representatives. Kamari was great last year, coming over from UCLA, and Elijah Page is always a good guy to speak with. And Makai Lemon, we'll see if he breaks out of his shell a little bit in Las Vegas. That would be something that we'll be watching for. So, yeah, those 3 are going to be speaking. USC is on the last day, so we're getting there kind of early, right, Ryan? We're getting there on that Tuesday, right? So
No, I think we're getting Wednesday.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, I don't think we're going. USC speaking Thursday?
Correct.
Yeah, I think we're coming on and you're going, so you have somewhere else to go, a wedding or something, or?
Going to fly out late Thursday night after it all winds down.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, we'll be there. Chris Trevino will be there too. It's Vegas, baby. I love it. Got to do 2 trips to Vegas last year. Had a good time. I don't think we're going to do any sort of meetup since it's media day.
No flanker?
We could go. Maybe we do something at Flanker. If you're a USC fan going to be in Vegas, let us know if you're going to be there. We'll do a Flanker meetup, which we had that bar. They were great last year. We met before the LSU game. We haven't had a tailgate party there. We did the same thing for Texas A&M. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, looking forward to Vegas. And then so Indy and I are in the studio, and then Connor walks in, and so we're getting ready to start. I'm prepping the show. And he's like, "Did you hear about this new transfer portal thing?" And we're like, me and Indy are like, "What? What are you talking about?" And I think it was a Ross Dellinger tweet bringing that up. So we can talk about that, I guess.
I don't want to give anyone bad information. I'm still going to talk to people at USC later today to totally understand it. But so there's a new one-time transfer portal window. The NCAA Committee on blah, blah, blah issued a waiver to permit athletes whose schools place on designated student-athlete lists to enter the portal July 7th to August 5th. Now, we think this means that this is for any player who would have been kicked off the roster due to roster limits and didn't have a home. But since that first thought happened, now those guys were going to get grandfathered in, so they could end up staying at their school. But if they initially, with the settlement, thought that they were getting cut, that we think that this is for those players, not for every returning player. But I'm not 100% on that, and I don't want to give out bad information, so I'm waiting to speak with people from USC to totally get an understanding on this. But that was my Ryan's understanding of it, and I think that makes sense, but I don't know if that's 100% what this is all about.
Literally just reading Ross's tweets before this. But I think what ended up happening was that, and I know a former USC player, Cooper Lovelace, who transferred to Northwestern, became the starter on the offensive line, but then they realized with this new roster limit, they weren't going to have a place for him. Now, I don't understand when he was starting and then you don't even have, like, he's not in your top 10 or whatever you want for offensive line. I don't know what the deal was, but then they were like, hey, we're not going to be able to keep you for this season because of these new roster limits. And I think this happened to a lot of players where, if you have 120, 125, 130 guys on your roster, 85 scholarships and the rest walk-ons, what are you going to do? Well, he ends up transferring. Do you remember where he ended up going? New Mexico.
Cooper Lovelace?
Yeah.
Northwestern and then Colorado, right?
Colorado. Yes, he went to Colorado. But I had messaged him a little bit and I was asking him, like, hey, what's going on? And that, kind of explained it to me. It's just like there were these cuts that were going to happen. And when the House settlement kind of went through, they had to back off that a little bit. So there's like a sort of a grandfather deal in there. But I think it's the term is DSA, designated student athlete. So for players that were going to be off of the roster, you could become a DSA and then they would not count towards, my understanding is they wouldn't count towards the 105 or whatever. And then you could still play. So they would be like kind of over the roster limit. And what this new portal window is saying is if you stuck around because they offered you this like DSA tag, there's now a portal window that's like July 7th to whatever, August, I forget what the dates were, that you could actually, if you're like, hey, you're eligible to play, now you can go in the portal and go play somewhere else if you want to. So that's kind of my understanding. It's a weird deal. But guys like Cooper Lovelace already transferred because they thought they were going to be out. If he stuck around, I believe he could have stayed and been on the Northwestern roster and been a DSA. That's my understanding of all of this, but it's kind of confusing.
All this just makes me believe even more. Collective bargaining, get a commissioner, and what's up with the transfer portal in the middle of the summer all of a sudden, like out of nowhere? Like that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I get that you got to give these guys a chance and gals a chance to switch schools if they were going to get cut, but just, man, the rules that everyone plays by, it just seems like they change every day. And as someone who covers it, it's kind of frustrating. It's like, can we just agree on a set of rules and then go from there? I don't like how, settlement, and then they're not going to be grandfathered in. Oh, now they are, and all this crap. Let's just get to the football. Let's just get to the basketball. That's what I like. I don't like this legislative stuff.
There's a lot of it. And unfortunately, we've had to talk about it a lot this offseason just because it changes, the rules, the playoff, everything about what this, what going to be meaningful in the season, like it's getting tweaked, and players now getting paid directly by schools. And we talked about that for months and months about how this was going to happen. And yesterday it started. It's like, okay, it's a whole new thing now. I don't know if you talk to players on the basketball team at all. It's like, have their lives changed now that they're getting like, checks from USC directly? Is it different?
I mean, I guess for women's basketball it's a little bit different, but yeah, I mean, their lives have definitely changed, and it enables you to have a more comfortable college experience, and you can go out and eat, and you can go to the mall, and you can see them, go watch a movie and things like that. But they're all like really humble about it and great about it. But definitely their lives have changed since, when I came in as a freshman in 2019, and, we obviously couldn't do that. And but they're loving it for sure.
All right. Well, that's it. I think
time for a break.
Yes.
We're going to go on a little break, and then we'll come back and answer some questions. All right, we're back, and it's time to answer some questions. But first, we have a voicemail.
Oh, she's going to get right into the voicemail. I love it.
And Vista. So here we go.
Hey, Peristyle. This is Rick. I've been a member for a while. Alumni from Vista. And I have some questions about the recruiting, a little bit of recruiting, but this mainly for the Peristyle. How much a factor is the alumni football players? My understanding is that some of these events they've had, there's been a lot of alumni football players that have been showing up for these events. Have they been critically helping the program to get in recruiting and just to be involved? And secondly, do any of the acclaimed Hollywood personnel that have gone to USC, have they been helpful as well? I mean, I know Will Ferrell is obviously and Snoop are obviously two focal guys that have been involved. But, I mean, is George Lucas helping? I mean, can they do things like pull from that? Or maybe some of the musicians that have gone to USC, Yo-Yo Ma or something? Have that been a factor? And obviously I'm guessing the weather has played some part of it. But, somebody like Reggie Bush explaining what it was like to be at the pinnacle of USC when he's going to clubs and whatnot, obviously going out with Kim Kardashian. So he's obviously got a name for himself. And Matt Leinart was a superstar as well. So how much of a factor is all that stuff? So I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Rick. I mean, it's part of it. I wouldn't say it's critical.
It's a case-by-case basis. Like
Yeah.
with Jakeem Stewart, the famous movie producer who does the Marvel movies. I'm not big into movies, so it's probably some obvious name that I just don't know. He went to USC, and I think when Jakeem Stewart took his official visit, USC had a meeting with him and to try to say, hey, maybe we can help you get that Thanos trademark, and that made a difference to him, I believe. But, if you're just a 3-star defensive back, I don't know if you're getting a meeting like that, so I'd say it's a case-by-case basis. As for the alums helping out, I mean, we saw when Kingston Viliamu-Asa and I forget who else were visiting USC. They brought Troy Polamalu out, and Troy Polamalu came to practice a couple weeks back for spring ball, a couple months back. I think that helps, but that's not the end-all, be-all where we see Kingston end up going to Notre Dame. So I do think the alums help a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's all about money and your fit. Those are the probably 85% of it, and then the rest of it, I guess I should throw in relationships too, but that's kind of part of the fit. Like money, relationships, how you fit in, that's always going to be the big three. And if a meeting with a famous alum or a football player can get you over the hump, they'll do that. But that's really not a huge part of it, I'd say.
And I think you bring in guys, and it's not even on the recruiting side, but like when Troy Polamalu will come to practice, and I think it's the head coach and the administration reaching out to former players. I've talked to former players that felt like they were on the outside looking in a lot of times. I think these guys want to welcome people back, and if you can get a picture with Troy Polamalu at practice, if you're a player or you're a recruit, that can be a big deal. Does it change your? I don't think it's that a huge factor in the whole thing. I think where this can come into play, I don't think Yo-Yo Ma cares about USC football recruiting like you do, Rick, and a lot of people. And I think that's one of those things. Does George Lucas sit up at night wondering if USC is going to keep the #1 recruiting class? I probably not. I'm not guessing he does. You sort of need that. Phil Knight is a huge part of it. He's the billionaire. He's he's a huge Oregon fan. He wants that to happen. What you're seeing at Texas Tech, former football players that became billionaires in the energy industry, like they care about that stuff. I think on the USC side, I mean, Will Ferrell cares. He was an intern for Tim Tessalone in the sports information office. Like, how crazy is that? I haven't heard he's like dropping huge checks for NIL or anything like that. But I think factors like that could be interesting, but they're not huge unless they're just like big into recruiting. And there's like, I'm going to dump millions of dollars into this because I want to see USC football succeed. I haven't heard of any of the USC celebrity alum kind of doing that. But I think one of the factors, and we're seeing this in some of like the flyers and stuff that USC is putting out there as far as being a top college media market, the entertainment industry can be a big deal. And I've talked to former USC football players that are used as extras, or they're stuntmen or things like that. You could, if there's some sort of pipeline for, hey, we're going to get as some NIL deal, if you're filming like the movie like 300, like there was a bunch of former football players that were playing like gladiators and things like that. If you need big-bodied, athletic-looking dudes to do stuff, hey, that's something you can kind of tap into, where you can work with movie studios in Los Angeles if you're USC or UCLA, where you're probably not doing that in Lincoln, Nebraska. But so I think there's things you could take advantage of that help, but nothing that's like critical, like, oh my God, USC is going to be a great recruiting because Will Ferrell went there. Like, I don't think that's the case.
Matthew also in the chat made a good point. USC sells itself. So many NFL guys, so many people who have had success in college have made that jump to the NFL and done amazing. So many Hall of Famers, so many first-round picks. You don't necessarily need to meet the Hall of Famers and meet the first-round picks. You just need to see that, hey, these guys did this, and I can do that too. And that's a huge part of it too, where USC, it doesn't necessarily matter who the coach is year in and year out. They're going to get a certain level of talent, and if you can play at that level, you'll have a good chance to make the pros. Bada bing, bada boom. A lot of good players want to come to USC for that reason, and I think that is the reputation. I think has to be a bigger deal than getting a meeting with a player or getting a meeting with someone famous in Hollywood or something like that. That reputation is massive, and is probably the best thing USC has going for it.
And we've got another question. A question from BC Gaming. Do you think Oregon or Notre Dame will be the toughest game on the schedule?
I think Notre Dame is going to be the toughest game on the schedule. I think Notre Dame and Texas are the two teams I'm going to bet on before the season to potentially win the national championship. I just like that Notre Dame has so much coming back. They got a new quarterback, but that defense mixed with the running backs they have coming back, that's going to be challenging. And then Texas, they might not win the SEC, but I think they have the roster like in Ohio State last year that is just loaded and could push at the end of the year. So Notre Dame to me is going to be that really most challenging game.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree there. I mean, I think both teams, obviously both teams were playoff teams last year. Notre Dame, was in the national championship game. They played Ohio State tougher than Oregon did, certainly. But yeah, I would say, I think Notre Dame, there's less questions right now, but like if Oregon becomes like a juggernaut again, would I be surprised? Like, no, but I think the odds are that Notre Dame ends up being a little bit better team next year. So I'll say, or this season. So I'll go that one being the tougher one.
We've got another question from BC Gaming. Do you think we lose Iman if we got Chad Bowden before the transfer window?
I'm going to say no. I think Chad Bowden, his whole thing is about retention. That's maybe not the whole thing, but that's the most important part of his job. That's how he sees it. Like, high school recruiting is obviously really important, but like we got to get these guys on campus and the job's not done. We need to retain our top players, and that is his number one goal. If he'd been here a year before, I envision him doing what it takes to keep a key player and making the necessary financial decisions needed to keep Pregnon. Not that USC didn't have someone who could do that before, like they always could have said, hey, we'll give you a better deal, but it just seems like with Bowden running things, it's different. It's more streamlined. He's going to be just better at retaining players than what USC's had in the past. So I think Emmanuel probably would have stayed if Chad Bowden was here when he left.
Yeah, I agree with you too. That's one thing I really thought about because he was considered your best offensive lineman. And I think that's something that, yeah, you could go out and bring somebody in from the portal to replace him, but to have the chemistry that you're already there. Just you don't need to retrain or anything. You just kind of keep him around. I think Bowden's the kind of guy that's going to move things around, make necessary decisions like, well, he's going to become a higher priority as opposed, and I feel like he would have done, if Pregnon just wanted to leave no matter what, then he's probably not going to keep him. But if there was a chance to keep him, I think having the personnel staff that USC has now a little bit earlier, they would have been able to do so. As long as he, was open to it. I think that just...
Well, he was open to it. He said he was coming back, and then all of a sudden...
that's a good point,
He just switched. I think it's the classic case of Oregon, and everyone does this. It's not just Oregon, but they poached him. They were like, hey, we'll give you more money. He was like, okay, I don't know if I'm going to be a sure thing in the NFL. I'll take more money from you. See ya.
Yeah. And I think Bowden would have been able to...
get ahead of that.
Either match or get close enough that make it appealing, because if he wanted to stay, then you make it so, hey, here's a monetary reason why you should still stay, and do it in a and if Oregon was going to way overpay for him, he might have balked. It's like, you know what, we can do this, but we're not going to do any whatever. But I think probably some better decisions would have been made behind the scenes, and then give yourself a much better chance to keep him if it was possible.
I agree.
We've got another question from A Dog's Life in Portland. It's a two-parter.
Okay.
Which QB would you rather have, Jaden or Aller? And follow-up, which QB has the higher ceiling between the two?
So he's talking about Drew Aller from Penn State.
I'm not the biggest Drew Aller guy.
I haven't really been either.
But I think you have to take him.
Yeah.
Just
there's proven production there. He's taking the team to semifinals.
Aller made some mistakes against USC last year, but he was nails on that last drive, and he was awful against Notre Dame in that semifinal game. So I definitely hold that against him. But he has had moments where he's looked good. I think he's kind of a little right now, and maybe Maava takes a step forward. To me, he's a little bit of a better Maava, where you can see the ceiling and the plus plays are high, but the minus plays are minus. But it's a good question, because Aller has an all-star team around him, and Maava has a good team around him, but maybe not quite at the level of Penn State's this upcoming season. So, if this wasn't a USC podcast, everyone nationally would say, "Oh, Aller," but he hasn't blown me away by any means. His floor, though, I think is probably a little higher than Maava's, but it's not a great gasp. Aller's made some big mistakes.
I think it's a better question to ask after the season, because you've only seen 4 starts at USC from Maava, but Bo Perbula, people like him a lot, and Aller beat him out, and he's now starting with Missouri. I think he went to Missouri, so he's already sent a starting quarterback to the SEC. I think on the production side, you have to go with Aller right now, and I think his floor is a little higher than what we've seen the floor of Maava to be, and we've seen him play really well, and we've seen him have some struggles. Sort of similar to Maava last year, where he didn't play the best game throughout that, and then played well at the end when he needed to take USC down. So, yeah, but it'd be an interesting one to ask at the end of the season and see what you think.
And then which QB has more of a higher ceiling?
Oh,
I think Aller, because he was the number 1 ranked recruit in high school, number 1 quarterback. Maava was way behind on that in the recruiting rankings, and those don't tell the whole story, but it's all about having the tools, and there's a reason Aller's getting first-round draft buzz, even though I don't agree with it. Maava isn't, but we all know that can change in a second. I'm having a hard time saying, oh, Aller is way better than Maava, blah, 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 blah. I actually think they're close, but if the season started tomorrow, I probably would pick Aller, but it's a decision, and I think nationally people are oh, what are you talking about? That's not even a debate. It's Drew Aller, where I actually do think it's a little bit of a debate, because Aller, we just have seen him struggle at times, and it hasn't been pretty all the time.
Yeah, I'd go with Aller too.
And then next question from BC Gaming. Who are you more worried about QB-wise, Nico or Dante?
Nico. Dante might not be good. Dante Moore, the Oregon guy.
Yeah, no, I'd probably be more worried about Dante Moore just because he has a better team.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not necessarily about the quarterback. I mean, Nico could be lights out, but he doesn't have the weapons that Dante Moore would have. But yeah, I mean, Nico took his team to the playoffs last year, but this is not a playoff roster that he has at UCLA. Oregon has a playoff roster, so I'll just go with Dante. Just more about the team than anything.
I just think when your team so publicly makes a move to get another quarterback, they don't succeed, they run out of options, and then it's just like, oh, we got to go with this guy. Like, that is not a recipe for success. Where USC, yes, like every team, they sniffed around transfer portal options. You know, you got to do your due diligence. But, like, Oregon very loudly said, Quinn Ewers, $6 million, come play. We don't believe in our guy. Like, what else can you possibly take away from that other than that they didn't believe in Moore? And then Ewers goes to the NFL. They're left with nothing, and now it's, oh, you were our guy the whole time. Like, I don't know. I just think that isn't really great for his confidence, and I have a hard time after what I saw from him at UCLA, even though it's been a couple of years, saying, oh, he's going to be this great quarterback. I remember him at the Elite 11. He blew me away, but when it comes to real football 11 on 11, Dante Moore really hasn't shown me much, so we'll see.
We've got one more question from BC Gaming. If you had to lose a game, which would it be, Notre Dame or Oregon?
Notre Dame. Because
it doesn't count in the league.
Yeah, it doesn't count for your league. I think both games would be massive, but I think just on the recruiting side, everything on the Oregon, you need to beat both of those teams. Like, there's, droughts against both of them, but I think the Oregon game is more important for league standings, recruiting on the West Coast. I think there's a lot of reasons you'd want to make. If you can only win one of those, I would take Oregon all day long.
Me too. Anything have to, like, does it make you think about Notre Dame maybe being the last game that they play? Does that have anything to sway your decision? I think the smart choice, it's the league game versus the non-league game. You can easily overcome a non-conference loss, and if you lose to Oregon, maybe you miss out on something by one game, and that hurts you in the league. But maybe the fact that it's the last ever game against Notre Dame, potentially ending that rivalry with a bang, like, does that change your opinion at all?
I don't think it's going to be the last game, but we'll see.
No one can agree on anything right now, so
Yeah.
I'm nervous that maybe for a few years they potentially won't play, but we'll see, because it doesn't seem like that the Big Ten's going to get their way with the college football playoff stuff.
That's pretty nutty too, where just like you thought the SEC and the Big Ten would just decide, here's what we're going to do, and walk off hand in hand in the sunset, and now they're upset with each other, and who knows what's going to happen there. But I still think that USC and Notre Dame will play, if at all possible. Probably moves around a little bit, but just importance of, you want to keep this recruiting momentum against Oregon going, and nothing would help more than actually beating them on the field, going to Austin and getting a win there would be, to me, that's a big deal. The Notre Dame game, yeah, like it matters, and but if I had to pick one, I'm picking Oregon.
One other thing with the Notre Dame game, USC took Notre Dame's general manager. That'll spice it up a little bit. I think in terms of like a big game, that's going to be a real spicy one. But yeah, logically, it's Oregon. You'd rather win that game because it's a Big Ten game.
Sweet.
We got one last question.
At the buzzer.
Oh.
When is the media day? Big Ten media.
July 22nd to 24th, I believe. Is that right?
I had it pulled up here, and then of course
I believe. Yeah, it's either 21st to 23rd, or so there's 6 teams per day.
22nd to 24th.
22nd to 24th. So USC's on the 24th, the last day. 6 teams per day, because there's 18 teams in the Big Ten, if you're mathing at home. And so I'll check out a little bit of the stuff on Wednesday, but then the USC day will be Thursday, so we'll check out what everyone has to say, and should be a lot of fun. I love that it's in Vegas and not in like Indianapolis, so that's way better.
Yeah, Vegas is way better than Indy, that's for sure.
We've already booked like all of our flights for some of this other stuff, and man, it's like so much travel.
For Indy, UCLA was actually on the flight with me from LAX to Indy last year.
Oh, really? Okay.
All the UCLA players for that media day. That was funny.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that's it.
Thanks, Matthew, for the compliment. Appreciate it. It's a great show.
Oh, thanks,
Yeah.
Matthew. I'm so glad that India didn't mess up the audio this week. No, it's
You're
whatever.
welcome, guys.
Thanks. Good job, everybody. Appreciate it. Yeah, and we do thank if you were watching us live on YouTube or Facebook. It's always awesome. It's great to get people in the chats talking and asking questions and stuff. If you're watching the replay videos, those are great too. And our podcast goes out everywhere you can get your podcast, the Peristyle Podcast. We love it if you can leave us a 5-star review. I think on Spotify now you can leave comments, so we'd love that. Any kind of review. Apple Podcasts, I know you can do that. We love reading those on there. I got to check out the Spotify ones. I don't know if we're getting reviews on that, but I think that's a newer thing that they can leave reviews if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that's all I got.
See you next time.
Amazing. See you next time.